Sacre Bleu, Heathens and Heretics. It's another week of In the Abyss, and the whole metal community clinging on to watching Gajira at the Olympics opening ceremony. Padre, I'm assuming you can't watch this shit on TV over there because it's filth, isn't it?
No, I've got one of those pirate fire sticks and a VPN, so
you can't say that. The authorities will get you.
I'm fine. Yeah, I'm back. I'm back in the desert.
Are you happy to be back?
It's 48 degrees today. It's too fucking hot. I haven't left my room. No, it's all right. It's fine.
No one's got any sympathy for you, so
No, I bring this on myself. So.
Well, yeah, you bring this on yourself, and we've also let you control an episode as well. So we'll get to that in a minute, but we may as well quickly talk about Gajira at the Olympic opening ceremony because, to be fair, it was quite entertaining. It wasn't quite what I was expecting, but a bit of pyro and that kind of, I thought it was quite good.
I mean, logistically, I'm quite. I don't want to say I'm impressed, but it was quite a clever way of doing things because obviously they're not doing it in the stadium. They're all doing the whole ceremony along the River Seine, aren't they? So,
yeah.
Of course, when you're in a stadium, you've got all of the behind the scenes and people running around like headless royalty. Shifting things and plugging things in and tripping over each other, etc., etc. And oh God, there's a metal band playing in the corner. But in this instance, they focused on a beheaded opera singer, Marie Antoinette doing her thing, and panned out to see basically the band standing at windows on nice buildings. It's like, there you go. That's how you do it. You don't have to worry about all the nonsense. Just get them, plonked somewhere and let them rip.
And some fire and shit.
Who played at the 2012 London Olympics? Did we have any metal bands playing there?
No, did we? Fuck. No. We had Sabbath at the last. Well, Ozzy and Tony Iommi at the last Commonwealth Games because it was in Birmingham. But
see, why is it as a country? Not only do we not fund alternative music, make it easy for people to make it, but then we disrespect it and we overlook it.
We've had this conversation enough times, and we've concluded it's because British government are fucks.
Yeah, basically. There's no point in keep going on and on about it. But at least Birmingham represented because they do. Yeah. There's Black Sabbath all over the fucking city, so it was only right. But
I mean, if you ever
exactly
in the 2012 London Olympics, if there ever was an event crying out for a metal soundtrack, Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner by Maiden. I mean, it's just like that should have been the intro to at least the 5,000 meters, not just the marathon. But
you could never have Maiden do it. Never.
They gave the whole thing to Danny Boyle to direct, didn't it? So it was always going to be nostalgic.
That would be quite cool, though, wouldn't it? If you had like metal music as an intro to each, specific event in the Olympics, like weightlifting. I don't know. Iron Man,
Phantom of the Opera,
some like massive hulking guy that's like from Uzbekistan. He can like bench
Phantom of the Opera would be a great one.
Exactly.
Of course it fucking would. Yeah. And obviously you'd have Daley Thompson. Is he still alive? Any Daley Thompson?
Yeah, he's still going.
Yeah, he's still going. Running into the stadium with a bottle of Lucozade.
Yeah, it's all the Lucozade. Yeah, it works. That's what our parents gave us when we were ill as kids. None of that fancy trendy drink nonsense. That was medicine.
I don't know. My dad tried to give me hot milk and whiskey once when I had a sore throat when I was a kid. So I don't recommend that.
For the archery and the pistol shooting and the rifle shooting, could you have afraid to shoot strangers? There's a lot of Maiden songs you could use, like Running Free would be another one.
Run to the Hills.
Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner.
Yeah, we've had that one.
I've just said that.
You're not listening.
Are you not listening?
No, I was talking over you, so
Well, sometimes that's what you got to do just to get a word in edgeways. Anyway, so this is a Padre episode. We should have done this one a few weeks ago, but we have let you have it. So explain your reasoning.
This is just a bantery, easy to put together episode where we can be, kind of zennials. So we're like kind of weekend of Gen X strong end of millennials. We remember the 80s cartoons. That's basically what it is. So yeah, I mean, it's thinking like, toys and how they connect, how all those like childhood toys we had connecting with like metal. Is there a link between them? And I want to like make one of the points I've found this delving around on the internet. The case was made that one of the most metal forms of like childhood toys or collectibles is like Warhammer, because Warhammer at 40k is it's a critique of the end of the British imperial system. it's like imagine like an empire in space that's crumbling, it's dining off past glories. It's like it's counterculture, and I'm sure there are a lot of people who either listen to our podcast or like metal are into things like Warhammer, Dungeons and Dragons. Maybe not. It's a loose connection to say that they're toys, but they're definitely collectibles.
I was going to say, by calling Warhammer toys, you might be upsetting people with that one.
Yeah, I'll get a visit from the custodies. But I looked into it, and so for example, Meshuggah have written loads of songs about Warhammer. And I think there's a French or a Danish band that basically wrote an entire album based on the warp in Warhammer and the kind of the space behind what you see. I'm not au fait with Warhammer. I find the lore interesting, but I've never played it. I don't paint the miniatures or anything like that. But so that was the starting point, and then I was thinking about what other things that things we played around with when we were kids. Could you kind of make connections between metal and or are they like allegories of metal music? And so things like looking at all the old cartoons that used to be around in the 80s and the early 90s and how they all had toys to go with them. I don't know whether the toy came first or the cartoon came first. It used to be kind of hand in hand, didn't it? And then that got me thinking about the band that springs to mind is Kiss. This is nothing that they won't make into a toy or some kind of merchandise, because there's the Kiss dolls.
Well,
the Kiss cartoon.
I think Kiss are out. The Kiss are out there on their own. I think come back to Kiss, but from our point of view and our age,
I need to make a point though. First of all, we need to get it there. That you mentioned the Warhammer thing, and you mentioned Meshuggah, and who else was it?
I can't remember the name of the band.
If you Google it, there are quite a few bands that are Warhammer themed. Nothing that I've really heard of, to be fair.
But you didn't mention the obvious one, which is Bolt Thrower.
Of course,
we need to just make sure we know about Bolt Thrower. We've heard of them. Let's just, because their entire shtick is Warhammer. But also, just before we crack on, I need to point out this episode was not my idea, and I'm the nerdy one here. So I just need to say, this is I'm down with it, but this wasn't me begging to talk about nerd shit.
This is Padre being allowed to have his way, but
no. This is purely just a kind of, this is a vehicle for banter. This is a light-hearted episode where we can just talk about metal and stuff we used to do when we were kids, basically.
The first things that spring to mind for me is theme tunes. That's like, if I was to just hark back, the first thing that you like, Thundercats theme tune and like He-Man and things like that, and they've got things like that have got obvious links to heavy metal. You can almost smell it. It's that obvious. But
we've been, me and you and a lot of other fans probably around the pub table over the years have joked, that what's the most metal cartoon from the 80s, and everyone would always go back to that guitar solo from the Thundercats thing. I think that's what you're talking about.
Exactly.
And I've looked on YouTube. There's loads of it says if you type in on YouTube Thundercats metal intro cover, there's loads of stuff.
Yeah, of course.
Some of it's quite funny. And that got me thinking about. We've had these conversations before, but if you were going to place these cartoons into like metal subgenres, then I think, where would you put Thundercats? Because I think Thundercats was, as far as 80s cartoons go when we were kids, in terms of the toys, the cartoon, the time it was on as well, it's quite glam.
Well,
because it's mainstream.
I've definitely got questions about this. So Padre sent out his notes to me in the Voice of Reason, And you link these toys and these cartoons to certain subgenres of heavy metal, and I've definitely got questions about where you're going with some of these.
Yeah, I have a feeling I'm going to have to pull rank it.
Look, some of them I do get, but I'm gonna start with death metal, right? It's not the first one on the list, but I'm gonna start with that. You've got Thundercats in there, so and now you're calling it glam, so you can't make up your mind. Then
death, I think, yeah.
Then you've got Boggles, and then you've got Barbie and Ken. What the fuck is death metal about Barbie and Ken?
Mate, it's all a ruse. We've been had for years. I think if you scratch the surface, they're both in massive Cannibal Corpse fans. It's like the kind of like they go to the gym, they drive around in nice cars, they go out for brunch on a Sunday morning, have their avocado on toast together. They're on the surface, they're the perfect couple, and then when they get home, they're into some really dark, twisted shit, man. Like they've got like what you don't see is that you could buy the Barbie and Ken house when you were kids, like and you could buy the car and all the sets that go with it. But there was also the unreleased Barbie and Ken sex dungeon.
I still don't understand what that's got to do with death metal, but
yeah, it's just no. They're into they are. I reckon on their off time, Barbie and Ken are going around those S&M clubs. They're into the really dark death metal stuff, with laced with sexual innuendo. It's just a vibe I get. It's a conversation starter.
Would that not make them industrial then?
I don't know. Maybe. Yeah, this is the problem when you start talking about metal subgenres. I was running out of space on the table, so I was trying to narrow it down. But yeah, maybe industrial. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have to ask: did either of you see the Barbie movie last year?
I watched some of it, and then it was an evening we were recording. Funnily enough, so I watched like the first half an hour, and then the wife watched the rest. But yeah,
it was very good for what it was. Very clever, very commentary. Yeah, commentarial. What's the word? I don't know. Whatever. But yeah, there was a lot to unpack and actually get into. I can see why it's had the praise. But it is worth noting that during Ken's big song and dance, we got a Slash solo.
I did see that.
Yeah, and also you've got the Ken belt buckle, which is in the same font as Metallica logo. So Ken likes his metal. But Ken is also a bit of a dick, with aspirations that he needed to put down. So I don't know about death, but I can certainly see the industrial thing there because there is a bit of a power complex thing going on in both circles. And of course, Ken, everyone's Ken. There's no unique identity with everyone. Everyone's Ken or everyone's Barbie. So it is all a bit, I don't know, masked people in the industrial S&M dungeon. So maybe he's right in this instance. Maybe we want to give him some credit here.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like no one knows what those two do behind closed doors, or in those like kind of vans that the car used to be able to tow. So yeah, I mean, the Boggles were like those are the things that you used to wear on your hand, and you moved to guys and they live.
You're talking about Boglins.
Boglins, that's it. Sorry. Those are definitely death. Come on, they live in a cage. That's how vicious they are.
They're fucking grimy, swampy, filthy, dirty death metal.
Yeah, yeah. And you could probably, if you went to a gig wearing one of those Boglins on your hand, I reckon you'd get respect from the other people in the crowd. They'd be like, "Can I borrow it?"
Of a certain age, you might do, yeah.
Like you can just imagine like throwing one into the pit and the pit going like parting ways, going, "What the fuck is that?"
Well, we need to actually give a shout out to Radio City Social, our colleagues in Chelmsford who put on gigs for us. They've actually got a Boglin behind the bar.
They do indeed. Yep.
There you go.
They know their stuff.
In fact, what I'd like to see is the next time we go to a gig and there's only 15 people there, if we go on eBay and buy about 100 Boglins and just put them on the floor. So,
do you know how much 100 Boglins will fucking cost you these days? Those things change hands for, pretty big money. I'd love to have a Boglin. I'd love to, but I'm not paying 50, 60 quid for one.
Listen, this is where we're coming in with our merch now. So if everyone goes and buys our t-shirts, so we can go and buy Boglins, that would be cool.
Yeah, it's a healthy waste of money. Right, okay, so that's death metal, I get it. Hardcore, you've got Ulysses. I completely forgot about that cartoon, but that was a fucking epic cartoon. I don't think it generated toys though, did it?
You know what?
No, it didn't, but I had to put it in just because
epic.
Like, I mean, this is one of those things. It was just pure genius. Let's take the Homeric tale and put it into space.
Into space, yeah.
Like, and then you've got the bit at the beginning where you've still got the gods of Olympus are in it, and they're like, you know, mortals, you defy the gods, and Ulysses like, you know, fuck you. I'm going on an epic space odyssey, and while all the rest of the crew of the ship are in some kind of stasis. What more do you want? I mean, it's definitely. Well, it's not hardcore. Again, this was more of a. There's only so many rows on the table that you can put on the spreadsheet. So
it's prog metal, isn't it? Gotta be
prog. It's definitely prog.
You know,
and I think this is what I've been considering. A lot of this stuff, I think, is going to come out as prog metal because, like, when you're taking those kind of classical tales, turning them into futuristic cartoons, that's the kind of thing a prog band would do. We're not going to mention that band, don't worry.
Well, they weren't doing anything until 1989, were they? So, you know.
No, yeah.
Yeah, and they haven't got the imagination anyway, so, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, again, in terms of prog, there were toys for this, but they weren't that popular because they got caught up in a kind of lost in the background. But you know, when you've got the whole prospect of the Wild West in space and Brave Star, you know, even his horse is half robot. You know, that is the kind of stuff you expect from a prog band. Robotic horses, a bad guy called Tex Hex, which, you know, probably is some people call Tex-Mex. I don't know. But, you know, for God's sake, the man had the ears of a wolf, eyes of the hawk, strength of the bear, speed of the puma. Okay? That is prog.
You got too much time on your hands.
I mean, Brave Star's a deep cut as it is, so, you know.
Yeah.
Talk to me about Thomas the Tank Engine then. What's that all about?
That's just basically, that's good old-fashioned steam-powered traditional metal. You know, that's like
steam-powered traditional metal. But it's narrated by Ringo fucking Starr, so surely it should be just removed on that basis alone. You know, the rules.
But you know who should have been narrating it, don't you?
Who?
Geezer Butler. Geezer Butler would have been perfect for that. Geezer should have, you know, what they should have said is like what they should have done and go, right, we're going to do the first season, Ringo Starr. Now, I've got nothing against Ringo. You know, I think he lent a lot to that TV show. But, you know, get after the first season, say, Ringo, thank you very much. Next one in, please. Season 2, Geezer. Season 3, who else could we have had in there?
Barney Greenway from Napalm Death would have been a good one.
Yeah.
We'll stick with the Brummy thing.
David Coverdale.
David Coverdale.
Yeah.
He would have, I think he'd have made it a bit sexual though. You know, all those trains going into tunnels and, you know.
Yeah.
Coverdale will get a bit lost in that. You know, Thomas is sliding up inside a tunnel and all that. It would get a bit much.
Yeah.
BBC wouldn't have that.
No, I mean, no, but but BBC would no, and it wasn't BBC, was it? It was ITV, Captain Pugwash.
Oh, and Seaman Staines and Roger the Cabin Boy.
Oh, that's just absolute filth.
That's a myth, isn't it?
It is, but it's still funny. This fucking, I'm sorry, got to interrupt. This opening ceremony is just getting weirder by the minute. I don't get it. All right, okay. Some of these make sense. Like Conan the Barbarian, He-Man, Prince Valiant, these all make total sense. This stuff is pure Man of War. All of this, it's because it's loincloths, isn't it? It's muscly men. It's got heavy metal written all over it.
Let's party to this bit, and I'm going to offer something after this. And I'll do that.
This is what I was talking about, right? So, like, not only did I go away and think of all this shit because I was bored, but okay, so. Let's imagine that you Man of War release an album based on He-Man. Okay, well, there was a band that, you know, was a big fan of He-Man. What would the name of the band be? Well, I thought the name of a band that was like obsessed with He-Man just be called Eternia. But that's not a bad name for a metal band.
That's a power metal band, 100%.
Yeah, so the band name is Eternia. The album would be called Return to Snake Mountain. No, so the album would be called Return to Snake Mountain. Obviously, Snake Mountain, where Skeletor lives. So these are the tracks of the album that I thought of. So not track number 1, intro. So this has got like a kind of like a tribal intro going into some really vicious riffs. Beastman. Number 2, For the Sorceress. 3, By the Power of Grayskull. 4, Evil Lyn. 5, Skeletor's Wrath. That's a fucking name for a metal track if I ever heard one. Number 6, this one's a bit tongue-in-cheek. Big Ass Furry Pants. And number 7, Masters of the Universe. That would be a classic metal album.
Yeah, but if you're going to write a song called Masters of the Universe, and if it's an album closer, it's got to be a good 15 minutes long.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, this is a 7-track album. Yeah. Then there's
did a song called Master of the Universe, didn't they?
Oh, there's going to be one out there somewhere. There probably is He-Man related metal out there already. If there isn't, I'd be shocked.
And the thing is, as well, I mean, only you would need a frontman for a band like this that was really, into like, weightlifting, because you need someone that's got, a bit ripped. And what I'd like to see is if this were a band, someone not walk onto stage, ride onto stage on the back of a fucking green tiger. Because if you saw that, let's say you're at a festival and you go, who are this band Eternia? I don't know anything about them. And you say, well, let's go and watch them. And all this, after you've got the intro, this man rides onto stage on the back of a tiger. You'd pay attention to that band.
Yeah, you would. Of course you would. Of course you would. But it still doesn't.
I just checked. It was Angus McSix did a song last year. Of course he did.
Of course.
And of course, there's the Hawkwind 70s album.
So, there you go.
So if you had like a glam or a thrash EP based on Thundercats.
And again, Thundercats now, are we?
Yeah, I think this should be a good name for a band as well. If you were going to base it on, some kind of 80s toy. Band name, Thundera. Okay? Album title, The Sword. Yeah, Thundera. The planet of the Thundercats. Yeah? Album title, The Sword of Omens. This is an EP, by the way. It's not a full album.
Because you couldn't think of enough song titles for a full album?
No. Because these are all 15 minutes long. Right. Track number 1, Sight Beyond Sight. 2, The Ever Living. 3, Battle Tank. 4, Vulture Man. I mean, what more do you want? That right there. That would shift numbers. That kind of album would. If anyone's listening in a band, I want someone to go away and write a song based on the Sword of Omens from Thundercats, right? Called Sight Beyond Sight. I used to have the Sword of Omens as a kid, right?
And I had the sword as well.
If you had that sword and you got into a sword fight with someone else that had one of those cheap plastic swords from like the charity shop, you'd win every time. Like, I remember this kid at school came at me with a lightsaber from Star Wars. I cut the lightsaber in half.
Yeah, right. I want to circle back to He-Man and Masters of the Universe, actually, especially as there's been a bit of a discourse about that franchise in recent years because it's been rebooted by Kevin Smith. And actually, I watched the first season and it was actually quite good. I never got around to the rest of it, but I should do. But obviously, I'm going to bring my sort of comic, sort of nerdy, sort of knowledge into kind of thing. But there is some stuff I actually want to talk about when it comes to 80s cartoons and toys. I'll do that a bit later because it's semi-political as well. But yeah, obviously the He-Man thing created in the very early 80s, but it was originally conceived to be a bit more dark, a bit more violent, because I think it hit a DC comic first. And it was actually a Superman team up, which was weird. But it wasn't, I think, conceived strictly as a kids TV show. It was close in spirit to Conan, apparently. But I think someone saw that it had potential as a kids TV show, which is the route it went down. So yeah, the comic came first, but obviously the cartoon built up the momentum, which was the case in those days. But I think you had a question earlier, what came first, the comics and the toys? A lot of the time with these things, they were conceived and pretty much pushed at the same time because it was all,
Yeah.
the cartoon and the toy. The cartoon was like the advert for the toy, but you can see the benefit of the cartoon in terms of popular culture. So it's a bit of a trade-off. So yeah, so 83 was Masters of the Universe. But what was interesting is we talk about all of the power metal and the homoerotic stuff and other bits and pieces, but something that came out in recent years when they rebooted these properties, especially when She-Ra was rebooted, because that came first about in 2016, and it had a much more sleek animation style, much more, sort of open and inclusive. And of course, it prompted a bit of a sort of moan from the arsehole end of the male internet community because, She-Ra looked like a real human in the 80s, and none of this like woke stuff and all that kind of thing. And it's like we just need to point out actually the animation of She-Ra wasn't that great, and nor was He-Man.
No, it was terrible. Most of it. I mean, if we want to mention Thundercats, pretty much half the budget went on the fucking intro.
Yeah.
But anyway, Masters of the Universe, the studio, the animation studio that did both He-Man and She-Ra back in the day, it was quite notable because it was about 50% LGBTQ compared to a lot of cartoons, which now you think about it, you had unicorns, you had rainbows, you had characters called Fisto, yeah. There you go. There was a lot there that you probably think, my God, it's I think the kids that really liked He-Man and She-Ra probably were the ones who were, who were gay, basically. But the power metal.
I'm sorry. I don't know if you can say that if you like She-Ra and He-Man, you were more than likely to be gay.
Oh, if you like both.
No, that's not what he said. No.
If you like, but yeah, because the thing is, these guys who claim to like She-Ra when they were kids, they're fucking lying. They like He-Man. They wouldn't have liked She-Ra. They've got no claim over it. But certainly the boys that like both. There's probably.
I had no problem with She-Ra, and I'll say this: do you remember how excited you were when you heard the news?
Steady on.
Iron Maiden were getting back together. Like that for me when I was a kid is the same as like when I heard that there was a crossover episode where He-Man and She-Ra were in the same cartoon, and Skeletor and Hordak were in the same cartoon, and they were both going to fight Skeletor. I thought that is badass. And as a 7 or an 8-year-old who had all the He-Man toys, I didn't have Castle Grayskull. The reason I didn't have Castle Grayskull was because of Margaret Thatcher's economic policies and the deconstruction of the UK manufacturing industry, which led to my parents being on their ass in the 80s. My dad was unemployed for a lot of it, So we couldn't afford Castle Grayskull. I had to make it out of cardboard boxes. Thank you, Blue Peter. But I had Ram Man, I had He-Man, I had Man at Arms. I didn't have the cat, unfortunately, Battle Cat. I had quite a few others as well. I had Moss Man, right? And I lost him in the garden because the fucker's camouflaged. Moss Man's actually covered in green moss. And
he's probably still in that garden.
Yeah.
No, my dog found it. My old dog that found it chewed the fucking arms and legs off it. So he's probably still there, in the garden somewhere, like the character Johnny from the one video by Metallica. No arms, no legs, can't hear, see, just in there banging his head on the grass. SOS, kill me now. But I mean,
that's a tenuous link.
He-Man was metal. I mean, Castle Grayskull. I know our friend from the podcast, Bean. He had Castle Grayskull. Obviously, his fucking family were rich cunts. You get that vibe from Bean that he would just go down like taunting kids with that, going, "Oh yeah, I've got the castle. Yeah, come over, look at it, and then we can have foie gras for dinner."
He probably had a Mr. Frosty fucking
ice
maker thing as well. That was like the pièce de résistance. That was, if you had one of them, you were the dog's bollocks.
The pièce de résistance is yet to come.
Okay, right. If we're gonna have have a go at each other for stereotypes, not all of us in Surrey were rich.
Yeah, but there's rich and there's Surrey rich.
Yeah. I mean, Surrey. If you're medium income in Surrey, you're a millionaire in Cornwall. It's basically how it works. Okay, or in the north of England, But yeah, I definitely think is it a case of that if you liked He-Man when you were a kid, you were more likely to grow up to listen to like power metal? Is there some kind of correlation there?
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised. There's one thing you haven't got on here though is Doom. And
Well,
the
that's a
reason,
computer game, isn't it?
no,
Purely a
no,
computer.
no, Doom metal, as in the genre on
So,
your bizarre list. Because when I think of Doom, when I think of cartoons, and when I was being a kid, it was fucking raccoons. That shit was bleak.
It was, man.
That
Yeah.
always had a dark ending.
yeah, but you can't. Thing is, with the raccoons, you can't think of that without thinking of Lisa Lohan's theme tune.
The
You
theme
know,
tune's a
big
banger.
the big old sort of glam rock sort of glam pop
Yeah.
rock song. You know,
Yeah, the theme tune was a banger, but it just didn't tell the story. That
no,
theme
I mean,
tune because it was grim.
what's the name of is it Bert? Bert the raccoon.
Yeah,
And he's always messing up, but he's got his friends there to help him out.
yeah.
What I never knew at the time from watching that then, and what I realize now is that Bert was like a kind of forewarning for Joe Biden. Just the lovable character that just fucks up all the time, forgets his lines, can't say anything. And Cyril Sneer is Trump. He's in there trying to gobble up the forest.
I've remembered. You know what could be considered doom metal if you ignore the theme tune. Nightmare.
Oh,
Yeah.
Nightmare was great.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I think all the dungeons.
I mean,
all
as well. I mean, the actual cartoon Dungeons and Dragons, not the game, the cartoon. With the dungeon master and they're on the roller coaster. And
that's my only foray into sort of Dungeons and Dragons was the Saturday morning cartoon, which was great. I got fond memories of that. It was always great. But, well, I mean, if I watched it now, probably not. But
no.
yeah, at the time it was.
We watched it. Obviously, he had a little unicorn and a little bald cunt.
Was that his actual name?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely like Dungeons and Dragons. That's like if that was a band, it would be like Rainbow with Dio. I mean, that's what I think of.
Well, I mean, again, heavy metal and Dungeons and Dragons that's hand in hand. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Obviously you've had Stranger Things as well in the last couple of years, and all the links with D&D and Metallica and all of that. So, it's all kind of come full circle.
I mean, I think look, listen, this whole episode really, this is just a bit of a laugh. Let's make some links, have a bit of banter, but
it's nostalgia.
It's nostalgia. The serious point, though, I think, is this is part of the fabric of what we would say is our tribe, being the metal community. There's so much crossover between metal and things like Warhammer miniatures. Like the amount of people I know that do Warhammer and they like heavy metal. The amount of people like The Voice who are hardcore into comics and they like metal. The amount of people that are into a variety of different things. And the one thing that reunites us all is metal. But at the same time, because we're metal fans, because we're in a subculture, because we have our own set of values, those values also resonate with the values of other communities. And it's usually because we're mostly outsiders. So I think that's the serious point here, is that, and we can find that common ground between comics, music, toys, collectibles, and other crafts and things like that. Because, this is the thing. People rag on things like Warhammer, but if you have to sit down and paint those miniatures, one, you have to be good at art because you can't fuck it up. And two, it's a lot of patience and it's a dedication. And, I don't play Warhammer or Dungeons and Dragons, but fair play, man, because a lot of people that play Dungeons and Dragons are very imaginative.
Yeah, it's almost it's a proper labor of love. That is, you got to that's serious shit.
My friend David is Hogwarts.
The amount of crossover into like things like the fantasy genre and sci-fi as well. So, like again, how many metal fans have I met that haven't read Dune by Frank Herbert? It's one of my favorite books. Most of us are probably, the vast majority of metal fans are probably Star Wars nerds or big Star Wars fans. I'm thinking, I'm
Couldn't
sure
give a shit about Star Wars, but there you go.
No, well, to be fair, you're an outlier there. I think I would say
you've never really been into the nerd stuff. You love your metal. You love your football. and you're fighting and stuff, and that's kind of you, isn't it?
Fighting?
Really?
What are you trying to say?
I thought you like UFC and stuff and all that kind of.
Like, you know, grew up on boxing and wrestling, but
Yeah,
just don't make me out to say some kind of fucking animal.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Well,
listen, look, what people don't understand about Dragenza is I think he's got chav tendencies, you know, that have become less over the years. But when I first met him, he used to go around in a Holland shirt and white trainers and, like, you know, beige color khakis. That's what he was wearing the first time I met him.
right. Before you carry on with this slur, quite frankly, white trainers have been a fixture of heavy metal since before we were born. When I met you, you lived in an Umbro manager's coat and a purple shirt. This must have come from Burton's. So, you know, fucking stay in your lane, cunt. And we called you Bobby, for fuck's sake.
We've all got a checkered past. Yeah, I've never been known by my name.
Right, we haven't touched on. I mean, we're talking about the 80s for the most part. So what's on his list as thrash?
Right, thrash. All he's got on under thrash is toy soldiers. That's it.
I think there's a good case for Transformers being thrash.
Yeah,
because it's that was 1984. That's when it started.
Transformers, yeah, and Mask, the cars that used to turn into other things.
Yeah,
interesting. That was a bit more AOR. I thought, you know, cars and American stuff, and it was a bit military complex as well, wasn't it? So
I think there's only one cartoon and series of toys that is that, and that's in America, G.I. Joe, in Europe, Action Force. I mean, we'll come back to that.
We will, because that's I think we've got a bit of a weird sort of viewpoint of G.I. Joe over here, but
action man.
Well, I mean, the point I was going to make is, when I think of Bean and the level of affluence he grew up in and the largesse of his family, even though I've never met them, I know anything about them. I just get this vision in my head of Bean, but he was also one of those twats that had the Millennium Falcon, and he'd probably fly around the room where he could have like the kind of dream scenario where the Millennium Falcon attacks Castle Grayskull. That's how rich he was.
I didn't know anybody who had the Millennium Falcon, I must admit. That's
I knew one. Listen, you're never going to find someone that owns a Millennium Falcon growing up near Redruth. I mean, come on. I mean, where we're from, once the mines were closed down in Cornwall, no one could afford the Millennium Falcon. Okay.
I don't think people could afford it before then.
Oh no, they could. Some of them could.
Black metal. Right, so you've got Dungeons and Dragons in there as well, but what we need to talk about is that Lego castle. I had that, so I didn't have Castle Grayskull, but I did have that Lego castle.
Okay, well, the Lego castle for me is, again, something that I always wanted. You know, as a budding military historian when I was younger, I used to have my nose in loads of history books, and I always wanted that Lego castle. And again, thanks to Margaret Thatcher, I could never have it. But that for me is one of that. I mean, how metal is that? You could build a castle with knights and dragons. How black metal is that? Come on, fantasy. You know, kind of. You could have Vikings as well. You could recreate mythical battles. You know, you could. If you're a Lord of the Rings fan back there, the castle could double up as a castle from, like, you know, Lord of the Rings, like Minas Tirith, for example, or Rivendell, or not maybe Barad-dûr, because you need different Lego for that. But those castles were badass, and they had all the traps inbuilt with it, and you could, like, you know, really run wild with that. And I think that's that's the epitome of a metal toy, the Lego castle. You know,
were we all Lego people as kids? You know,
The thing is, my parents, well, my mum especially, wasn't keen on toy figures at all. So I had very, very few of those. Anything I had was the odd one given to me at Christmas and birthdays by family and friends. You know, fair enough. But yeah, my mum said, we're not going to buy you toy figures because you'll grow out of them one day.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
which I can see
the irony.
I can see her point, but obviously now, you know,
Yeah.
with my, you know, obviously we're all boxed up at the moment until I buy a place, but yeah, I've got more fucking figures than I ever thought I had. But obviously, a lot of those are still in their packs because they're decorative, but you know, whatever. But they, yeah, both of them pushed me towards the creative stuff. So Lego was the honest one, obvious one, because that was a universal childhood thing, and you can keep going with that, keep developing, move to Technic when you were older, which I did. I fucking loved Technic after about age 9. But of course, they also pushed me because I loved reading, I loved drawing. Obviously, they encouraged me to do all that. They got me a weekly comic, and obviously, that's when, you know, that's what the love of Marvel started after the Spider-Man cartoon in the early 80s. So yeah, so toy-wise, Lego was probably the main thing. But what I wasn't bought were the special ones, because in those days, your cities and your fantasies, those ones weren't as big as they are now. They were sort of fairly new. Those themed ones.
That's because they were even. That stuff was niche. That was so niche.
Yeah.
I mean, no one, very few people used to go around flaunting the fact that they were like into Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that. And this stuff's all become more acceptable now, and it's partly due to the fact that, you know, the Gen Xers and the like people from our age bracket, we're partly responsible for making it more acceptable. When pushing it out into the mainstream, just from the fact that people our age are making and producing media content and media products that are putting that stuff front and center, like Stranger Things, like that kind of stuff. Like even TV shows like The Big Bang Theory, it just normalized it, where you've just got a group of adults who happen to be scientists who just there are entire episodes about like the Incredible Hulk on that TV show.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a mediocre TV show, but it was popular enough that it's kind of normalized that kind of thing.
I can't watch it because it's just it's I always wondered, you know, was it written by people taking the piss out of nerds, or was it written by nerds accepting the piss and think we might as well take the piss out of ourselves? And it's just like it always seemed a bit too like they are.
Yeah, what I don't like about it is I think, okay, I mean, the writing gets it becomes progressively worse as it goes on, and 12 seasons was probably 3 seasons too many. But I don't like the fact that the way it portrays people that you would deem as being incredibly smart. Like, it's almost as like it's presented as being it's a fixed rule that if you are into science and you're a scientist, you're going to be into comics and fantasy and board games and Dungeons and Dragons. But at the same time, if you're into those things, surely one of the cast would be into fucking metal.
Yeah.
Why, you know?
Yeah.
I think you know what? I think my big problem with that show is I think they were all just so unlikable, the characters.
Yeah, they were twats. Yeah.
That didn't help it. I think with that kind of dynamic, you do need at least one character who you kind of root for, don't you? I mean, they kind of turned that on its head the way the whole thing finished. I'm not going to talk about it, obviously, in case anybody hasn't watched it. I know it's years ago, but the way it finished, it kind of went a bit that way. It was something a bit redeeming about it. But yeah, you're right. None of them are particularly likable. The point you made about whether it was written by nerds or taking a piss out of nerds, it's almost like it falls somewhere in between those two things.
Oh yeah, it was definitely.
It's almost like it's nerds taking the piss out of nerds. Sort of, that's kind of what it feels. Because I mean, I don't know, but a lot of it seems quite detailed. Like when they're talking about comics and characters, things like that. It's pretty detailed, and some of it's quite niche and quite, you know, obscure.
Yeah,
self-deprecating.
Yeah, but it's kind of it's weird because I mean obviously I wasn't so keen as well because it was made by Warner Brothers, who are just very exclusively DC Comics, so there was almost fuck all Marvel. So you know, but if you compare that to a program like Spaced,
genius,
which we only had 2 seasons, and you know maybe it was a bit too nerd referential, but you know the central character was one of us. He drew comics. He worked in a comic shop. It was a bit of an arsehole at times, but not completely unlikable. And it's just there was a whole world of difference there. I thought, that was much more realistic, even though it was quite a stylized program.
I was quite surprised there was no metal in space, because both Nick Frost and Simon Pegg are both metalheads, or they're into their metal as much as they are any other genre of music. So I was quite surprised that there wasn't more hints within that show purely because of that. But
I'm not, because it was made between 1999 and 2001.
Well, I suppose not exactly peak time, is it?
Wrong time completely.
Yeah. But just an absolute genius of a TV show, one of my all-time favorites. And probably, after we get off this, I'm going to watch it.
Yeah. Oh, it's my favorite of all time. It's stuck. It's just brilliant in every way.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely genius. But yeah,
I mean, going back to I think like what we said earlier about thrash, toys, cartoons, stuff like that. It's a bit. I mean, what you're kind of looking for something that's like kind of high octane, fast paced, full of twists and turns. So I don't know what you guys. I mean, when are we saying Thundercats for that, or are we saying something else?
That's a really tricky one, because you think cartoons for us were kids and nothing was really that full on. What about the kind of the sort of radioactive side of?
Well, this is exactly what I was thinking, but I'm thinking from a toy and cartoon point of view in the mid to late 80s. What was there? I think as a property, as a franchise, one thing that does spring to mind is Garbage Pail Kids.
You know what? That's on Padre's list on the traditional mail. But yeah, you're right. Garbage Pail Kids. That works.
It's very municipal waste, isn't it?
Yeah, all of that. Yeah. Well, thrash and the whole nuclear waste and all that. It's all like RoboCop should have had a fucking thrash metal soundtrack just for when Emil walks out in front of the car.
Yeah, and just like the front is the bad guy is called Lance Boddicker. I mean, what a name for a bad guy in a TV show. I mean,
Charles Boddicker. Boddicker?
You needed Charles Boddicker, something like that. And just the bit when the is it Ed 209 blows that guy away in the top of in the boardroom. That needed, if the minute he starts shooting and the body's lying on the model and the smoke's coming out of the bullet holes, you should have had Killing Is My Business by Megadeth playing. So I mean, do you squeeze Megadeth into every single episode we do? I was thinking about it earlier. I was looking at it as well, because there's quite a few, metal tracks that do reference things like this. So obviously, Holy War's The Punishment Due. The Punishment Due is about the Punisher. So that's a connection to, and so Killing Is My Business is actually about the Punisher. There's that link to cartoons and comics. I don't know if he's done anything on if any of them have done anything on toys, but
going away from toys a little bit on your notes that you sent out to us. You've got theme parks based on metal bands now, and you've got a couple of suggestions in there as well. And the one that sticks out, Kiss Mountain. Female fans get to ride Gene Simmons.
Yeah, you can just imagine it. Gene, like Space Mountain, it's completely dark and you get shot up, at high speed. So they take, especially, I'm not saying that there aren't male music fans who wouldn't be interested in this, but mostly Gene leans towards the ladies. They're just led into a dark room and they're told, Gene's in there and you can ride him for as long as you want. And you can be one of Gene's thousands of ladies. Maybe in the next stream after that there is Ace Frehley. You never know. So what was the other one? I mean you could run quite wild with this. I mean I was Universal Studios ride. The Black Album roller coaster, a roller coaster ride which actually takes the tourist or the customer on a roller coaster ride through the production of that album. and it's like the roller coaster actually lasts for over a year, and
Is Bob Rock driving it?
Yeah, Bob Rock drives it. Yeah, I mean, and then you could have an entire amusement park, theme park based on Fear Factory's demanufacture. Isn't it a dystopian vision of this future where man fights machine, filled with rides and attractions, or basically like the episode of The Simpsons when they go to Itchy and Scratchy Land.
So Westworld then. So Westworld then, basically.
It's Westworld. Yeah. But with but it's more dystopian because it's Fear Factory. And where basically what they've done is they've cloned Dino Cazares, and all the attendants, all the staff look like Dino Cazares, and they all walk around carrying 7-string Ibanez guitars. Now, also as well, I think you were saying earlier, a few weeks ago, that it was the anniversary of the release of Demanufacture by Fear Factory, and
it was Obsolete he was talking about when it was the 27th anniversary of the release of Obsolete, wasn't it?
I think the best thing to do to mark the anniversary of that record is to get hold of the master copies and just burn them. Burn it all. And just, in fact, take everything Fear Factory you've ever made and just burn it.
Well, next year is 30 years, isn't it, for Demanufacture?
Next year is Demanufacture 30 years, yeah.
Just all of it. Take the 7-string guitars, the master copies, take the band, burn them all. Just have a massive funeral pyre. Put them all on there.
Got nothing to do with toys and cartoons and childhood joy.
What about Lemmy's log flume?
Yeah, definitely.
Do I really want to ride Lemmy's log flume?
The ladies do.
Well, yeah. So we've heard. Do you splash down into Jack Daniels? I'm assuming you don't come down into water. Surely,
probably.
You splash down into something. It's up to you what.
Well, yeah. Whatever Lemmy says, really.
Well, let me come back to the sort of whole conversation about cartoons and the 80s and whatnot, because it's worth pointing out. Before the Reagan administration in America, there was actually a lot of censorship with comics and cartoons in America. It got properly McCarthyist in the 50s, for example, and that's how we ended up with basically no horror comics and things like the Comic Code Authority, which there was a load of mad reviews, but you couldn't tell stories about corrupt police officers, for example. That was a big no-no. Every police officer has to be a good guy in comics. But if you watch a lot of cartoons as well, there's similar things there. Outside of the obvious cartoony sort of Hanna-Barbera, Scooby-Doo type stuff, what was big and dramatic in those days? There wasn't. 70s cartoons were bloody awful for the most part. Even the sort of franchise stuff that Marvel and DC did, like with the Super Friends and Spider-Woman, they were just terrible, absolutely terrible. But in the wake of Star Wars, and I think obviously Reagan administration trying to, encourage money-making policies wherever they could, some sort of law was brought in to actually allow creative people more freedom with cartoons. Comics, not so much. Comics was pushing against the code in its own way for a few years. But cartoons had more freedom, and that's how you actually got a lot of these cartoons. Things like He-Man, Thundercats. They could be quite. I don't want to say violent.
Well, I think you've got to.
Didn't they?
I think you also have to look at. You have to put that into a wider context. So from the mid-70s on, you see the emergence of cable TV in the US, especially Turner Superstation, WTBS, and they're looking for cheap content, and cheap content is cartoons. And you've got there's that aspect to it as well. Plus the fact, in terms of you're talking about McCarthyism and the House Committee on Un-American Activities, and that kind of puritanical censorship. And if you're going to go after people and put them on a blacklist, people that are deemed to be fifth columnists, insurgents, kind of reds under the bed, potential communist sympathizers, then a lot of those people would have probably attracted attention for that because they were outsiders, because they were kind of free thinkers, or because they were from certain groups. And those people I'm just speculating now. Those people might have been more likely to have come up with the kind of content you're talking about. But if you've purged an industry of those people, it's going to take a while to bounce back.
Oh,
so
yeah.
there's that. And I would also say as well that in the 50s and the 60s, it isn't up until the mid 70s when you have the entire debacle, which is the US retreat from Vietnam and the fall of Saigon. And that's coupled up with also Watergate and the fall of the Nixon administration, that people are just, they lose faith in the system. And once people do that, and I'm not talking about the baby boomers, I'm talking about the kids that were born in the 60s, the Gen Xers. Once they're hitting early adulthood in the mid 70s and then becoming adults in the 80s, they haven't been pre-programmed with that USA manifest destiny, America's number one, because they've grown up in a system that it didn't give them the fruits of capitalism in the way that their parents did at the end of the post-war period in the 50s and the late 40s. So they're going to be more akin to criticize the system, because by then as well, it's like you didn't have a lot of critiques of capitalism in those years, because it was like, you don't criticize the team because we're fighting communism. Once communism falls, then capitalism becomes more under the microscope, and that's where we've got to now, because there's no other competing system. So everyone's putting their focus on the ills of neoliberal capitalism. So I think that generation of people born in the 60s who come to awareness in the 70s and start working in the 80s, they're the ones that are probably pushing that kind of more edgy content. And also, I think by the 80s, you're talking about the Reagan administration. The Reagan administration was I think Reagan famously said, government isn't the solution to the problem, government is the problem. And they were very much laissez-faire, and they wanted to roll back regulation in terms of tax, economics, the public sphere. They still wanted government to be small enough to fit inside a woman's vagina and control a woman's body, but that's a different topic. So there's that attitude from the Republican movement in the 1980s, plus the fact the Americans had spent so much money in the 70s and the 80s. They were clearly going to win the Cold War, even though they were pushing the propaganda that they were losing it. Therefore, they had to spend more money. So I think you get cartoons like G.I. Joe, Action Force, which are just like you said earlier, military-industrial complex cartoons. Like, look at our amazing hardware that we're building and we're using to fight the terrorists and the commies. So I think that's the kind of context I would put that in.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, because G.I. Joe was written by the comic for pretty much most of its, I think, 14 years it was going, up until the mid-90s, was written by a chap called Larry Hama, who was Asian American, far Asian American. I don't know if he was one of the guys who was interred as a Japanese person in the 40s, because I don't think he was old enough at the time. But he was very liberal, and the comic was actually quite sort of progressive. So it wasn't the gung-ho American thing, but I think we inclined to think of it as. So
well, I mean, I used to. I mean, to anyone listening in America, in the US and North America, it's called G.I. Joe International Heroes. In Europe, it was called Action Force. So I mean, I had the cartoons, I had some of the toys. Again, like, the big stuff, and like the pièce de resistance of any toy that I know of, it's not the Millennium Falcon, it's the Action Force aircraft carrier, which is now going for about over £1,000 on eBay. If you look it up, it's about the size of a small car, and I guarantee Bean had it. And I guarantee you, at one point, Bean put Castle Grayskull on top of the aircraft carrier and was launching off, going, "Look at me," So, I mean, that's a toy that you could actually invade a small country with. So if you had the Action Force aircraft carrier with the Sky Striker mock F-14 Tomcat that you could launch off the deck, which again that costs about £300, then you were minted, and you probably became a neoconservative and were responsible for the invasion of Iraq. But that's
how the fuck have we gone from talking about fucking Thundercats to talking about all that?
I don't know. This is the beauty of any episode that I come up with, because you never know where it's going to go.
Oh yeah, the beauty, right. Okay.
Because we've got to balance out the nonsensical banter with something relatively intelligent and make people feel like they've actually like learn something at the end of the
Yeah.
episode.
Well, all right, fair enough.
It is interesting though. Funny enough, the creator of Thundercats was called Ted Wolfe. I'm actually sticking with glam metal for Thundercats. I think 86 to 89.
Yeah.
We know about the theme. The theme was a bit mad. Well, the theme was very shred, wasn't it? But yeah, you can see the connection. But big flowing hair. Chitara.
Yeah, but like again, like all the mainstream stuff. Like I mean, A-Team is glam. The A-Team is pure glam. I mean, I don't know about. Did you guys have any of the A-Team toys? Because I had Murdoch.
I had a couple of figures. Yeah,
I had Murdoch.
I had the A-Team van, mate. The roof came off, and you put them in it. Don't fucking point. Don't fucking wave that finger at me.
Worse than Bean. You want the moon on a stick? No, that would have been. I didn't have the A-Team van toy. I had the A-Team van that I could actually sit on and push around the lounge with a little steering wheel.
I wouldn't be surprised if he still got them.
Oh.
You know what? I actually re-bought that A-Team van and the figures probably 10 years ago when I had a load of fucking toys and figures in the house and sold them on again. So yeah, I've actually owned that twice. So yeah, that's how fucking special I am.
I mean, the A-Team is like, I mean, that TV show epitomizes the 80s for me.
Of course it does.
Yeah.
I mean,
all the people that got shot in that show and never had a gunshot wound. It was incredible.
I mean, no, the ridiculous one is when actually there was a helicopter chase, and one of the guys in the bad guys in the helicopter crashed into a cliff face, but the helicopter just sort of stopped and fell onto the ground. Of course, they all jumped out before it blew up. It's just like, well, it was a running joke. It was genuinely a running joke, but because people weren't dying, they just weren't going to kill anyone, and they did that on purpose. And it wasn't until was it Decker? Decker was the
one person.
He died at the end. He got shot, and that was it. That was like an honourable death.
Yeah,
you know what's just come to my mind? What about Terrorhawks? Do you remember that?
Oh yes,
that's
metal as fuck.
How have we fucking forgot about that?
That was quite, that was Jerry Anderson, wasn't it? That was old, even at that point in time. But that screwed me up. That did. But
that was dark as well.
It was dark as fuck. And you know what? I think I'm gonna have to Google it, but I'm pretty sure it was set in 2020.
Oh God.
Which says it all. Hold on. I'm sure it was set in 2020.
I mean, Marvel had a small 2020 period range actually.
Yeah, I'm right. It was set in the year 2020. So there you go. That says it all, doesn't it?
We can blame them then, can we? Ugly witch type.
I mean, like you've got like when you can look at the cartoons and then the toys that came out of them, or the toys that then spawned cartoons or films or whatever it is. But there are other examples of toys that these are a bit beyond our time, because by the time this comes out, we're kind of leaving primary school, going to secondary school. But you've got like the toys for the film, like Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. They were never going to work.
Nah.
They were. That film. That's a metal character that's just portrayed in a way that's just not metal. And Kevin Costner is not metal.
Yeah,
That's like Nickelback doing Robin Hood.
You say that.
Yes, that's exactly it.
But this is interesting because there was a TV show in the 80s called Robin of Sherwood, wasn't
it? Yes,
yeah, it was great.
Clannad,
yeah, Clannad. But that show overall was metal because all the long hair and whatnot.
Yeah.
All the pagan stuff, all the satanic stuff, the weird.
There was a tree called Herne that would talk to people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was. There was no. The Christians were the bad guys. Basically, that was metal. And the thing is, the Prince of Thieves movie was half based on that. It was kind of using the popularity of the TV show to do itself, because there was never a black skinned guy or an Asian in it as part of the legend. That was brought in by the ITV TV show.
Yeah, I know. And then you've also got the best kids TV show ever made, Marian and a Merry Men.
Oh, that was fucking great.
I mean, that is, if Tony Robinson is ever remembered for anything, forget Blackadder. I love Blackadder, by the way, or Time Team or anything else he's ever done. That TV show was genius.
And you had Danny John Jules in it as well.
And it says, every Shrove Tuesday, we sing the song.
Fucking hell, really?
Absolutely.
Yeah, see, I remember it now, but that's not something I would have remembered. Up until having this conversation, kind of thing.
Yeah. Every Shrove Tuesday, that'll go around.
Do you remember the other one as well? Like, I mean, and again, I don't think this could have come from any other country but Australia. Round the Twist.
That was fucked up.
Exactly. Like, that is some form of prog metal.
That's Dillinger Escape Plan TV, kids TV. That is.
But that was the books they were based on were great because they were just separate short stories with different characters, and of course they brought them all together for the TV shows, all happening to the one family. But yeah, have
you ever felt like this?
No, those books.
When strange things happen, you're going around the twist. Yeah,
I just remember. Sorry, go on.
There was one great episode where the teenage lad got stuck in some public toilets with a ghost punk.
Yeah, the one that sticks in my mind is when he microwaves his underwear to dry them out, and he puts them on and he gets superpowers because of it. And then, but the pants shrink and shrink and shrink to the point at the end of the TV episode, they put them on a frog and the frog jumps through a plate glass window. And you're watching that as like an 8-year-old and you're going, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. You've come home from school, you've had a shit day, you've got your homework to do, mother's in the kitchen cooking tea, and you're sat there watching this and you're going, this is like an acid trip. It's that TV show was, like you said, Dillinger Escape Plan mixed with basically doing drugs.
Frank Zappa and
yeah.
Fucking Hunter S. Thompson involved in there somewhere as well.
I mean, it's Gonzo TV. I mean, it's Gonzo Kids Show. I mean,
it was very Australian. So
yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, but what do you expect? What kind of TV show would you expect from a country founded upon criminality?
They did invent the whirligig washing line though. What about Fraggle Rock? Where does that sit in all this?
That's thrash. That's absolute thrash. That TV show. I mean, if you take that theme song and turn it into a guitar riff, that's a thrash riff.
No, that's there was I think someone like Alistair, I think, did a sort of pop punk band. They did a cover of that. I think Fraggle Rock is pop punk.
He probably has got a bit. Don't forget that the lighthouse and everything, that's all filmed in Cornwall, so that's like fucking true to our roots. That is. So
Padres Lighthouse.
Yeah, Padres Lighthouse. You can't. Fuck me, fucking Fraggle Rock. It's funny. So you sit and have these conversations, and things just start coming back to mind, don't they?
Yeah. And what was the other one?
Trapdoor.
Trapdoor.
Well,
it's good advice though. Stay away from that trapdoor. You're a fool if you dare. Stay away from that trapdoor.
That's merciful fate. That is.
I've got a confession to make. Basically, in university, I borrowed trapdoor from a friend of the podcast, Gavin Evans, and it got I was watching it all night, and then the next morning it was in the VCR was in the communal kitchen, and I remember coming in and some fucker stole the VCR, the video cassette recorder, and trapdoor was inside it. And I remember Gav being really upset because we couldn't find. By then, trapdoor would become like a collector's item or something. It was really expensive to replace the tape. Yeah. So
someone came into your house and nicked your VCR. Did you leave the back door open?
No. This is halls of residence.
Okay, that's even worse.
It was right at the end of the year, right? And four of us had bought the video player. 3 of us were going to move in together, plus Rob. And Rob had actually paid out the other person to buy the video player 2 days before, then it got stolen.
Student scum.
Welsh. It's the Welsh, mate.
Yeah, I had a house party a few years back, sort of not long after you moved back to Cornwall, and it was a Halloween party. So got lots of tunes on, lots of horror punk and metal and whatnot. But we one of the things we did do is we got some appropriate stuff to have on in the background on the TV. So you got the music on. from the speakers and visuals from the TV. And as well as horror films, one thing we did have on a loop was the trapdoor, which worked very well.
Pure Merciful Fate trapdoor. That's what it is. Merciful Fate, a cartoon.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think as well. What other, thinking back to like when you were a kid, what other toys were kicking around? I mean, obviously you've got those old play sets where you've got the plastic helmet and the armor and the shield. I mean, that's
yeah.
Man of War
Even my kids had that when they were young. You know, it's that's.
I mean,
that's
I
really
had
cool.
I was always a big fan of like weaponry, the toy machine guns. But again, there's always some flash cunt who's got to take it to the next level. Like you've got like a little, I used to like my cap guns, 6-shooter. I had one of those Winchester repeating rifles, but it was a cap gun. I had the strip of caps.
I remember those.
And when we used to play army, I would climb up onto my garage roof and like snipe people from a distance from an elevated position. But like I remember one person coming out, he had one of these electronic machine guns that had a belt fed thing going through it, and I'm just like, fucker, just always one.
What are those little micro machines?
I had micro machines. They were great.
Yeah.
They got lost. They got lost really easily though.
That's that's Fu Manchu stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, mine would disappear
also,
really quickly.
I wanted to just touch on as well. Like, what's it like? So we mentioned Kiss earlier, and obviously Kiss is just a merchandise behemoth. There's nothing that they haven't turned into a merchandise. I mean, we've got the Kiss dolls, you've got the Kiss board game, Kiss coffins, etc. But how do you guys feel about when we've got things like Metallica, Monopoly, and is that going too far? Or is that acceptable?
It is all merchandising, isn't it? I mean,
yeah,
it would be more acceptable now because they've got to find revenue streams. Whereas back then, yeah, like you say, Kiss and the likes of Maiden, then they're not far behind with that kind of thing. But Kiss even had condoms, for fuck's sake.
Yeah,
so the pinball machine, everything.
If people buy it, they'll make it.
Exactly.
That's the collectible mindset, isn't it? Really, if people don't, they'll stop it.
And everything we've been talking about in the past hour, it pretty much talks to that. Whether it's a cartoon promoting the toy or the toy promoting the cartoon, it's like it's like, well, we could make something out of this, right? Let's make toys. So it's the same principle.
I've also got to say as well, when you talk about, they're not toys, but they're definitely popular with kids, especially with me when I was younger, is when you think of a band like Sabaton, then the thing that comes to mind for me is Airfix models, the Bismarck. I mean, I used to
Airfix metal.
I had quite a few of the Airfix models. So I had HMS Ark Royal, HMS Hood. I had the Bismarck. I had one of those big B-17 flying fortresses hanging from my ceiling and a Spitfire that I painted. The paint jobs were terrible because I can't paint for shit. But you could still know that is a battleship. So yeah, that's definitely, again, Sabaton, Man of War. That stuff is just power metal.
I mean, there's probably fuckloads more that you could probably even go back to things like fucking Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet and find links with heavy metal. We're metal fans.
Oh, yeah.
We'll find tenuous links to heavy metal with everything.
I mean, like the Mistrodds. Like, what was their agenda? Why did they have such an issue with Captain Scarlet?
Well, I've heard terrible rumors about Captain Scarlet, but that's the authorities to deal with.
Yeah.
But yeah, fucking. It's been quite good fun, to be honest, going back over some of that because there's a lot of things that I'd completely forgotten about. There's a couple of other things on your notes that I just want to touch on as well before we go. Your Dave Mustaine theme park was another one that was on there. I'm not sure how popular it would be, but Devil's Island, a magical island resort based on Dave Mustaine. Yeah, not sure about that one.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be very niche, I think really what you're looking about is an island that Dave owns, and it's like those like metal cruisers. Like Dave brings over a load of fans, brings in other metal stars, but what the people that pay to go don't understand is once they go, they can't leave, and they get that, and it's like it's and to just basically serve Dave's every whim.
Yeah, I don't want to be doing that. I really don't want to be doing that. But yeah, that pretty much rounds it up for me. I think it's yeah, it was quite a good nostalgia, to be honest with you. Next week is fucking Bloodstock talk, isn't it? So we're covering Bloodstock again this year. I'm not going this time. Padre's obviously not going because obvious reasons. But Voice of Reason and Bean will be representing. So we'll do the usual coverage. We'll have a bit of a preview next week. I think we'll have a look at the lineup, and yeah, it's I'm disappointed I'm not going, but it is what it is. Maybe next year, but it's a good lineup this year, and I think there's a lot of bands on the smaller stages that people need to check out, and we'll put some posts out on social media about that, because the main stages are one thing, but there's some really great bands on the Sophie stage, on the EMP stage, and on the New Blood stage that people should check out. So we'll talk about that next week.
How cool would it be though if we kind of just like encourage people right now, when you go to Bloodstock, take a plastic sword of omens with you. How cool would it be if you're a metal band, you come out onto the main stage and you just look over and there's about a crowd of like 2,000 or 3,000. They've all got plastic swords and shields and armor. That would be a great wall of death.
You know what? It would be, wouldn't it? Thinking about it. Yeah. If you did it like that, yeah.
Like what I would do is this: go right. Those flash gits with their lightsabers, they're on one side, and then the hardcore lot with your swords and shields on the other. Let's see who wins. They just like just picture that image of that number of people with lightsabers and plastic swords charging each other in a wall of death while like Lamb of God are playing, or whatever band that came after 1994.
Deicide are playing. That would be a good one. You can just scream Deicide as you run at each other. But there you go. Bloodstock. That's one for 2025. Then I think make it happen, and I'll make sure I'm there this time. But yeah, that'll be next week. We'll talk about that, and then obviously we'll talk about it again. Hopefully, Bean and the Voice of Reason survive it. And
can I?
I would say I hope it doesn't rain too much, but I don't actually care. So.
Yeah,
I forgot to mention this earlier. So just one last thing about toys. Possibly one of the most metal toys ever made. Do you remember that game, Crossbows and Catapults? Where you had, so basically you built a castle, either side, 2 players, plastic bricks. Then you had, one side was barbarians and the other side was Vikings. The Vikings had a dragon that would catapult discs to knock down the opposing castle wall, and the other side had a minotaur where you put the coin, the disc, in the horns, and you push the button on the back and the head shot forward and would sling the disc. Or you had actual crossbows on like rubber bands that would flick them across the floor. Vikings fighting barbarians with minotaurs and dragons. That's fucking black metal, man. Out of Nordic myth.
That's Ronnie James Dio, mate. When the way you describe it, I can remember. I couldn't remember by the name, but yeah, I do vaguely remember that. All these things are like, go on eBay and look at how much you can buy it for.
That's why I'm in Saudi, for the oil money, to go back and buy crossbows and catapults. So say to the wife, look, I got this. Oh, how much was that? 1,500 quid. What? Just go without food. Like, what? Just imagine, like, you say to you walk in, it's your wife's birthday. You walk in and you've got this massive box, really good quality wrapping paper, massive bow, bunch of flowers too. I've got you something for your birthday. She was like, what? What is it? Open it. Oh, I can't believe you've got me this. This looks really expensive. What is it? Opens the box. Action Force aircraft. What the fuck do you want me to do with this? I don't know. Invade Iran?
All right. On that note, let's call it a night before it gets out of hand. Like I said, we'll be back next week with Bloodstock preview. So until then, keep playing with toys. And get out on eBay and find some of these wonderful toys.
And the socials,
Know what
hit
you
us
might
up. What was your favorite toy as a kid?
Yeah, let's hear it, because there's probably loads that we've missed as well, because memory is fuzzy these days, so there's going to be loads that we haven't talked about. So yeah, just on social media, tell us your favorite toys and all that kind of shit, and what does hark back to heavy metal. There must be loads more. There's going to be loads more. So yeah, until that point, thanks for listening, and as ever, stay metal.